Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of the Polyhedra Show. This is Eric Vreeland. I am subbing in for the usual host, Anthony Cargill, who is dealing with some weather issues back at home now. We had tornadoes in North Carolina yesterday. Now we've got cyclones out in Southeast Asia, but we are persevering, and we have a very exciting show for you today. This is your first time tuning in. My name is Eric Vreeland. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at Polyhedra, and we do a weekly show here where we highlight some of the ecosystem projects collaborating with Polyhedra and highlighting how they're adding value to the community. So welcome in, Polyhedrans. For today, we're going to talk about a topic that probably top of mind for a lot of people, given some of the recent events in the space: blockchain security. which is one of the most pressing concerns in Web3 and something that, anyone developing infrastructure, anyone developing applications, it's going to be top of mind for you, because one misstep could, really be a significant setback in your project's process. So we're going to talk about smart contract vulnerabilities, something very relevant to Polyhedra cross-chain exploits and privacy risks. And we are joined by HashLock, which specializes in auditing and securing blockchain applications. Obviously, if this isn't your first time here, Polyhedra is building the next gen zero knowledge infrastructure technology. Our first product, ZK Bridge, is the leading zero knowledge secured interoperability protocol. We've also recently open sourced Expander, the fastest proof system in the world. And we have EXP Chain, Testnet, the everything chain for AI. So today, let me bring him to the stage. Without further ado, we've got Andres Altuve, BD manager at HashLock, here to discuss cutting edge security and cryptographic solutions that can create a more resilient Web3 ecosystem. Andres, how are you doing today?
Very good, Eric. Thank you for having me, and thanks for all the audience to tune in. Thanks a lot.
Amazing. Yeah, we're up over 500 audience members already and continuing to grow. So thank you again to everyone who tunes in on a weekly basis. We really do appreciate your viewership. Andres, for those in the audience who may not be familiar with HashLock, maybe you can give us the quick 30-second elevator pitch. What are you guys building?
100%. So HashLock is a Web3 cybersecurity company. We give a holistic view to cybersecurity, to security in the space. So we do smart contract audits. We do line by line code review of smart contracts in any type of chain. So we're chain agnostic. But we also do the Web 2 part. So of course, those are smart contracts. If you're building a protocol, if you're building a blockchain, if you're building NFT marketplaces, whatever you're building, those smart contracts interact with potentially with a Web 2 part of the architecture. So a front end, an API, cloud, a database. So we also do pen testing for front end. We do security for databases. We do cloud security and API testing. I think I already mentioned it. So yeah, we pretty much cover the whole cybersecurity spectrum for our clients.
Got it. And I know you've been in the space for a while. Can you talk a little bit about how have you seen the blockchain security space kind of evolve over time? What's different, or what exists today that maybe didn't exist 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think the main evolution or the main change is that right now audits are not a nice to have. Right now, it's a must have. Right, back in the days, having an audit doing an audit for your protocol was something that not everyone could do, or not everyone um, knew that they needed to do. Right now, it's a must-have. It's a must-have for growth. It's a must-have for fundraising. It's a must-have for pretty much everything. So I think the whole space have evolved and understand that security is a key feature. Um, and also, back in the days, there were just 2, 3 players in cybersecurity, in Web3 cybersecurity. And of course, that made things very difficult for protocols, for builders, because of availabilities, because of pricing, because of timelines. Right now, there are more players in the space. Of course, that makes our work a little bit more competitive, but also it makes the whole ecosystem healthier, right? So I would say those are the key things that have changed in the last years.
Absolutely. And competition is always good. Maybe it probably increases the quality of work, maybe brings down prices a little bit. I will touch on your comment around, audits being a necessity as opposed to a nice to have. And I don't even think it's, necessarily the first time that you launch, a new product or a protocol, when audits really can be a lifesaver. I know that, every new chain that we add to ZK Bridge, anytime we make any improvements to the system or any code changes to the system, those necessitate an audit. So just because uh, your original code was safe, if you make any changes to that, you're kind of, reopening yourself up for vulnerabilities. And it's important to kind of stay consistent and stay on top of those things. Can you talk? Can you talk a little bit about how you would approach this? Obviously, we're in a technology field. Everyone wants to iterate very quickly. How do you balance this desire to iterate and improve your product quickly over time with this need to kind of maintain high security thresholds and keep your audits up to date?
Yeah. So nowadays, different protocols, different projects out there and teams out there are using bug bounties for ongoing audits. So bug bounties are basically open source platforms where protocols projects they can share a bounty, and they can engage with different security auditors at the same time for an ongoing audit of the smart contract. So of course that keeps the smart contract, especially when you are making changes and upgrading the smart contract every now and then, that keeps the code safe in an ongoing basis, right? So that's what we've been seeing lately. Bug bounties have been growing exponentially, basically because that allows projects and teams to do an ongoing audit of their smart contracts.
Got it. And I think I want to dig into something else you said, which was, you're seeing a lot more kind of melding of Web 2 and Web 3. There's, projects building on chain, but that they're tapping into, traditional Web 2 APIs for some of their content or some of their functionality. I think a really good example of this is the kind of recent surge in AI activity. A lot of these innovative companies are figuring out ways to kind of leverage some of the maybe more mature APIs that have been developed off chain, but then want to bring in some sort of functionality that's native to blockchain. Can you talk about how, when you're kind of combining some of these traditional Web 2 applications or APIs with a Web 3 infrastructure, how does that complicate the process, and how do you guys think about security when it's now really very fluid? There's not just Web 2 and Web 3, but we're starting to see a lot of kind of convergence of the two.
Yeah. So both are both follow different processes, right? In usually our clients ask for both a smart contract audit and a pen test or an API testing or a cloud security process. So both the approach to both is totally different. So what we do is when we do both, we hand over different reports. Okay, so the preliminary report for the smart contract audit is one report, in the one for the API testing or the front end pen testing is a different report. But basically, the process is different because for a smart contract audit, we do line by line code review, and that's basically 90% of our work. That's the heavy work. Literally, we have security researchers, the best security researchers around the world, reading our clients' code line by line. Right? That takes a lot of time, and you need to have a patient and of course experience to read line by line to find bugs and vulnerabilities in the code. But for the Web 2 part is different because we don't actually have to read line by line, right? It's not an audit. It's actually our security researchers and our team basically attacking your system, right? So those are called white hat hackers. They're basically going to attack your system. They are going to find ways to enter your system to get data or funds or try to break your systems. And then based on those findings, they will write a report, right? So The results are, or we're looking for the same results, which is trust and security and safety, but the approach and the process is slightly different because of the architecture, the stack, and the logic behind the code.
Got it. And I think, in a similar vein, we're starting to see a lot more applications that are building multi-chain applications, and not just necessarily that they're on, EVM, but we're starting to see applications um, that are spanning across different virtual machines. So we may have an application that's, available on an EVM chain, but also has available on Solana or available on Move. Um, how does that complicate the process, and how do you guys think about this? Is this still, this, I know you've emphasized this line by line audit a lot, but are there new attack vectors that are introduced when you start thinking about multi-chain applications?
Yeah, 100%. So one of the biggest risks on multi-chain ecosystems or multi-chain protocols or chain agnostic protocols is that they need to use bridges, right? Um, Bridges and oracles, which is what feed the bridge, or the source of truth for the bridge, right? So those are the key targets for hackers, right? Especially centralized bridges, they create a single point of failure to all protocols and chains connected to them. So centralized bridges are it's a huge risk for multi-chain or chain agnostic protocols and products. Smart contract vulnerabilities, that's the key target as well for hackers. They basically, or hackers look for they read the code, and of course, because of the open source natural so because of the open source, how do you say, natural ecosystem of the Web3 space, hackers can actually read the code, right? So
Yep.
they will read the code as we do, right? But we do it all, of course, to mitigate those risks. They do it to basically leverage those problems and those bugs and vulnerabilities to actually drain users' funds, or get private keys, right? We've been seeing a huge growth in social engineering attacks. Basically, attackers use phishing scams and social engineering tactics to trick users into revealing their private keys, by sending malicious links or files. And basically, what users and corporations, we just face a good example that just happened last week with Bybit. They can actually steal your private keys, and they can take control over your funds and treasury and wallets. So social engineering has been a huge risk lately.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight one thing, because you did mention, the problem with a lot of multi-chain applications or chain agnostic applications, like you said, is they do have to utilize bridges or general message passing frameworks to share data between blockchains. Blockchains were not architected to share data. And so, one of the most common solutions that we've seen is a bridge that is either, has some sort of centralized middle chain, or we'll see bridges that utilize some sort of validator network to sign off on the authenticity of a message. And we saw a similar problem with this, right? Like you're not only opening yourself up to censorship issues, but you're opening yourself up to the possibility of, incorrect data being passed between blockchains. And so with ZK Bridge, we don't have any of those centralized validators. We utilize a zero knowledge proof. We generate a proof of, the block header, a proof of the consensus of the sender chain, and then we verify that proof on the receiver chain. So even in an instance when, let's say, a machine that generates these proofs, if it is compromised, there is still no opportunity or no ability by the attacker to actually create a fraudulent zero knowledge proof that is verified as true. even if the system were to be compromised in some capacity, because of the nature of zero knowledge proofs, because they are cryptographically secure, and because it is impossible to create a zero knowledge proof, a fraudulent zero knowledge proof that is verified as true. These systems are incredibly hardened. And I think, we've seen that with how ZK Bridge has been around for 2 years. Someone once told me, the only way that you can truly measure the security of a bridge, and I think it can be extended to, a blockchain or smart contract, is the amount of value at stake and the amount of time that it's been around. Because the amount of value is going to be what, entices an attacker to come and try to exploit your smart contract, and the amount of time is how long they've had to actually try it. And ZK Bridge has secured millions of dollars in value moving between chains, and has been around for 2 years, which in the blockchain space is an eternity,
A lot.
without an incident. So it's great to see that we're aligned on some of the current issues with cross-chain interoperability, and that it seems like you're aligned with ZK as a solution for that. I do want to just go back to one thing you said, because you have called attention to this multiple times, which is this line by line kind of code review or audit that you guys perform. Is this not the standard in the industry? Is this something unique to you, or really that very few audit companies are doing because of the amount of work that it takes to do so?
Yeah, so that's one of our key differentiators. Not all the auditors are doing line by line code review as we do. Again, that's pretty much 95% of our work is line by line code review, and I don't think there's any other better approach as today. I think in the future there's going to be AI solutions that will make that line by line code review easier and faster. But that's our approach. We also use dynamic and static tools, okay, and system to basically get low hanging fruits, low hanging bugs and vulnerabilities. But that's our standard, and the standard pretty much for high level security researchers. So if you're looking for a high level senior security researcher, or if you're working or looking to work with an external security auditor, you must work with someone that does line by line code review, because there's no other better approach.
Got it. And I think we've probably convinced everyone listening that if they are going to deploy something to production, the importance of making sure that it is audited by a reputable security firm. But let's talk about maybe after the smart contract is deployed, there still is a need to kind of monitor activity and make sure that you're able to stop or prevent anything that may have slipped through the cracks. Are there any tools for kind of real-time security monitoring, or that can help companies contain the impact if there is a on-chain security breach?
Yeah, definitely. I don't have a list of tools. I can actually can I send a link to the audience. Um, we don't do monitoring. We work with partners that do monitoring. Okay, so I can actually send a list of partners that we work with for these specific solutions. So if that helps, I can share a
Yeah.
link with all our partners in the comment section, so you can check it out, and potentially someone that is interested, they can also check it out.
Awesome. Amazing. And one, I know you guys kind of run the gambit. You do audits across many different ecosystems, many different VMs, Web 2, Web 3. Is there a particular vertical that you see as um, kind of being the most enticing to attackers. And I think I have a general idea. I think I have a hypothesis, but I'd love to hear from you. Like, where do you see attackers kind of focusing their efforts uh, in order to kind of
Yeah,
find exploits?
yeah. I think yeah, the answer in your mind is DeFi. Of course, DeFi. It's is again the niche hackers target. But I think I'm seeing a new trend, and I don't know if you agree with me. I think hackers are kind of like realizing, and I don't want to say this too loud, that users and basically private keys and private keys management is one of the biggest flaws right now, right? And again, using the Bybit example. So yeah, to answer the question, DeFi is one of the biggest targets for hackers. They are targeting DeFi protocols, and especially those smart contracts, because of course they receive a lot of a huge volume in transactions. So they target those smart contracts, breaches in oracles, to try and get control of the funds passing through those smart contracts, but also more centralized entities like centralized exchanges have been heavily targeted because of this private key management situation. So unfortunately, I see a trend here, and if centralized entities does not solve this problem, especially with private keys management, or they try to build internal tools to solve this problem, I think we're gonna keep seeing these type of hacks more often.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? We are getting smarter, we're getting more sophisticated, we're getting better tools, we're getting, better quality audits. Smart contracts are significantly more hardened than they were 2 to 3 years ago. And if you're, a malicious actor, you're looking for the weakest point in the chain, right? And now it seems to be shifting. So I guess you could say, Hashlock and teams like Hashlock are doing a good job. So they're no longer going after the smart contracts anymore. Now that's no longer the weakest link. Now what's the weakest link? Well, it's the individual who may who
Yeah.
may expose their private keys or who may be susceptible to a phishing attack or a social engineering attack, which is unfortunate. But if you look on, flip it and look at the bright side, it also means we're getting much better at protecting ourselves from an on-chain smart contract perspective.
Yeah, 100%. I used to be, by the way, I want to raise a point, a story. I used to be a Web3 recruiter back in the days. And in my first days as a Web3 recruiter, I remember myself interviewing those Polish, American, Canadian candidates, and I was interviewing them, and I realized that in their LinkedIn, they had a photo, a picture, but they look differently in the video camera, right? And they had a thick Korean accent.
Uh-huh.
And I thinking like, why would this guy? I mean, what's the reason why this guy wants to trick me? And then something happened a few years later with Munchable app. I don't know if you remember that
Yeah.
hack. Basically, they hired a team of 3 engineers. At the end, they realized it was just one guy. Somehow he tricked the company, and they hired him and the team. But by the way, he was just one guy, no team behind him. And this is a social engineering attack. So this guy was a smart contract engineer, right? Basically they hired him to build an operatable proxy smart contract. Okay, what he did is the deployer address of the contract that managed the modifications of the smart contract was managed by this group of developers or this developer. Okay.
Mhm.
So the insider, this smart contract engineer, used the control to assign themselves a large balance of ETH within the smart contract. Okay, and then they waited a little bit longer. Okay, so so the protocol or the project deposited into the same smart contract more ETH. And at the end, what happens is that they stole $62 million from the team,
Wow.
right? So we see these type of things more often. We see things like Bybit. We see social engineering tactics for users, for entities, for companies, and I think that's going to keep happening because it's very hard and it will take a lot of time to basically teach the whole ecosystem on how to flag this type of situations.
Yeah, and I think so. So that's, I mean, I do remember this event that you're speaking about, and thinking like, this is crazy. This person went. I mean, going through the recruiting process is incredibly annoying when you're actually looking for a job. Can this attacker is so diligent that they are going to go through the recruiting funnel and probably not get hired at the first company that they apply to, but keep going through this recruiting process just to get hired, and then do an actual, probably a reasonable job developing smart contracts for this company for long enough to then, take over the contract, drain the smart contract of all its assets. That is
Yeah.
a very, very, very long con. And it just shows you how persistent some of these bad actors can be. I think
Yeah.
one of the we always talk about, right, bringing the next billion users on chain. And when you talk to people who may not be familiar with crypto, I think you'll get a very common response, which is, I'm pretty happy with my bank. It's easy to use, and it's secure. Like, I'm never worried about the funds in my bank account kind of getting stolen, which may or may not be true. Obviously, like, your debit card could be stolen, or there are obviously vulnerabilities in traditional finance as well. But um, how do you think that we can continue to evolve blockchain security where it gets to a point where people are as comfortable with having their assets in their own wallet or on chain as having them in the bank? And I know a lot of us already here probably already feel that way, but how do we convince the next billion users that we're bringing on chain that the security is as good, or if not better than you maybe what you're used to in traditional finance?
Yeah, I think two key areas that I think the whole space need to improve on is trust and UX UI, right? I think by solving those problems, we're going to have the next billion users in the space. Trust, the difficult thing with trust is that it takes time to build, right? And it's so you can break the trust super easily. So it takes years to build trust, and it would take one day to destroy that trust. So I think trust will come with time, and of course companies like our company Hashlock and many other companies focusing on security are trying to build this trust, working with real builders basically to help them build secure, safe, and reliable code before they go on mainnet. Um, that's one of the key areas, but also UI UX is very important. I remember back in the days when I started my crypto journey, it was super difficult to first to use these tools. I was researching about decentralized exchanges, oracles, how to work with a wallet, how to send ETH to one wallet to another wallet. The the slang we use, it's totally a different concept. So I think UX UI needs to improve, and it's improving exponentially. But yeah, those are the two key areas: trust that comes with security, and UX UI to make the crypto journey or the onboarding journey for new users easier.
And I completely agree with that. And like I said at the top of the show, I think we are in a significantly better place, or in a significantly more secure place than we were 2 or 3 years ago, and 4 or 5 years ago. So we are um, making steps forward. I think people are starting to feel like the space is more secure. I think that the response to the recent, Bybit hack was really well handled. I think that, this idea of building in public, building transparently, um, doing public postmortems, like this is all, although it was a setback, I do think that events like this tend to make us stronger as an industry. And it was nice to see kind of a lot of people rallying around this and trying to figure out where things went wrong. And then ultimately, how can we prevent, events like this from happening in the future?
Yeah.
So with that, we're about halfway through the show, or maybe a little more than that. And as usual, our audience, the polyhedrons, uh, always comes through in the clutch when we put out a call for questions for our partners. They always come through. And again, this week we had hundreds of questions coming in from the audience. So that's really exciting to see. We've picked out a few of them, and we'll go through some questions from our audience. So the first one here is, and we already talked about DeFi, so I'll skip that one. How do you see AI playing a role in the future of blockchain security?
Yeah, that's I mean, it's crazy. Everything is around AI these days. It's crazy how technology moves so fast. It is crazy. Um, how do I see a future with AI in the crypto space, especially for security? I see a tool and potential. There's few companies already building something around it. But basically, kind of like an AI agent or an AI chatbot that allows developers to follow development good practices throughout the software development life cycle, right? So I imagine, a framework or a library that allows developers to follow different recommendations for gas optimization, right? To avoid re-entrancy attacks. I guess that tool will focus and will help the developers in basic. Try to solve basic problems, but with time, as we know, AI learns very fast. So with time, I think those AI agents or AI tools will help all the ecosystem, all the builders, basically build more secure and safe code bases and smart contracts.
Amazing. And I see one here. Uh, for this seems to be for me. What makes ZK Bridge unique compared to traditional interoperability solutions? I did touch on that earlier. I think most alternative interoperability solutions utilize, some third-party attestations to verify the authenticity of a message. Polyhedra uses ZK proofs. ZK proofs are impossible to create fraudulent proofs that are verified as true. So ZK Bridge is more trustless, has less trust assumptions, um, cannot be censored. In general, it is. I think if we're moving to these solutions that have less trust assumptions and less reliance on centralization or centralized third parties, we're going to be better off in the long run. And that those are kind of the principles that we took when we were building ZK Bridge. I'm just going through some of these because it does seem like we probably touched on them earlier. Maybe we can talk on this. What are the most common mistakes that developers make when launching new protocols or applications?
Not doing an audit. That's literally the key mistake they make, because there's no other solution as for now, unless you hire a security researcher that can of course do the audit for you internally. but you don't have the report, right? You don't have a well-known external auditor that hands over a report for you, right? So you need, I mean, with the market as it works right now, you need to audit your smart contract. You need to have a final report from this auditor, and actually you need to show this report, right? You need to post it on your website. You need to share it with your community, because if not, no one is gonna invest in your protocol. No one is gonna put money in your protocol. And again, it's a must have. So do your audit before launching any type of product on mainnet.
Got it. And I think in a similar vein, what are some of the most common smart contract vulnerabilities that you guys see in your, day-to-day work with Web3 companies?
Yeah, so the most common mistakes and vulnerabilities we find in smart contracts are reentrancy attack. So those are the first things we try to solve when reading smart contracts, because those are the main vulnerabilities we find in every smart contract. Basic logic errors in the code, but also 51% attacks. So one user, I mean, the logic, we just don't do the line by line code review to look for vulnerabilities and bugs. We also try to understand the logic behind the code. So 51% attack is when one user owns more than 50% of the governance token. And when this happens, basically that user can take control over the DAO, over the protocol. So those are the most common vulnerabilities we find in smart contracts.
And, because we are a relatively new industry, it doesn't seem like the standards and the certifications have kind of really that we have agreed upon them as an industry. I know, I worked in Web 2 for a very long time. We have things like SOC 2 compliance that allow organizations to kind of make sure that they are following best practices when it comes to some of these issues that may cause or may make you vulnerable to social engineering attacks and other types of attacks. What is the state of kind of security standards in Web3? And do you think that we need a new set of standards from Web3, or can we adopt some of these standards that have been created in Web2 and maybe make, slight modifications to them for a Web3 environment?
Yeah, so you said it correctly. I mean, it's such a new technology, and it's evolving super quickly. So we need to improve that. We need to improve on implementing security best practices into the whole software development cycle. But that's something that just very few senior smart contract engineers know how to do, and basically they are still learning, because the whole market is evolving. I think the best way, and I don't know if we have engineers in the space that might want to learn Web3 cybersecurity. The best way to learn is of course do a short course with, for example, Cyphering. They're doing a great job with cybersecurity courses. So learn, teach from experts, and then try to apply that experience in the space. And you can use different bug bounty programs for that. Actually put some stake in play, and start using those bug bounties, start reading line by line code review. And by doing that, you are going to learn security best practices, because you are going to be able to find bugs and vulnerabilities in your own code, right? So I think that's the best approach you can do right now. And I think that's the best approach in my opinion.
All right. Well, I think we're just about wrapping up here. Andres, this was an amazing conversation. I definitely learned a lot, and I hope that our audience did too. anything you want to leave, any final takeaways that you want to leave our audience before we get out of here?
Yeah, no, thank you, Eric. Thank you, Polyhedra. Thanks for all the audience. Again, always remember to audit your code before going on mainnet, even if it's a basic ERC20, a basic token smart contract. You need to do an audit. You need to make sure that the code is safe and secure. You don't want to be in a position where your community lost total trust on you and your team. And yeah, just follow us on Twitter, on X. We're at #_, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions. If I didn't answer any of your questions or whatever, you can just follow us on #_.
Awesome, Andres. Well, I appreciate you joining us here today. If you do need help with your on-chain security, or do reach out to the Hashlog team. They've been a phenomenal partner. I am Eric Vreeland at Vreeland. If you are interested in learning more about what we're building at Polyhedra with regards to next gen ZK infrastructure, please do reach out. Please do keep tuning in, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter. We do these shows bi-weekly, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we'll have some great partners coming up. Andres, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today. Hopefully, let's do it again soon.
Yeah, same, Eric. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.